First of all, this is really your first time you've ever seen it, and you really don't really enjoy this film, and that's you've stayed away from all the Godfather films for this reason. Can you explain that?
The artistry was there. Maybe this thing was a masterpiece if you're just talking about the artistry, and that is the actors. They were marvelous. The scenes, they were magnificent, all of that. But the messages that they were delivering were horrible. And when the one family fought the other family, and the one family was superior, etc., that was no time for applause. That was time to say to yourself, what is this? These are all murders. We have children who are going to watch this. And they, however cute they are, however great the artistry, what they're delivering to my children and everybody else's children are the worst possible messages.
I agree with you, but Americans like revenge. They like getting even. They like the fact that this guy squealed on that guy and that guy rubbed him out. That appeals to the inner, I don't know what part of me it appeals to, but we like to see getting even.
Well, they feel that's
we
justice.
hate snitches. And if the mafia rubs out a guy who snitched on another guy, yeah, that sounds good to us.
Excuse me.
No, I mean, I'm giving you you're a reality, that's a reality.
What do you think about that image? Is there some nostalgia for the New York of a different...
Oh, I loved where I grew up. Didn't you, Mario? I loved Brooklyn in the 40s. I was born in 33. We were very poor, as Mario was very poor. We were on relief for 2 years. My father died when I was 9.5. New York City bought my first pair of eyeglasses. But I'm very happy I grew up in New York. I think if you grow up in New York, you're 2 steps ahead, no matter where you go in the country. There's something about New York. I
think that's still true?
I tell a story. If you're from New York, if you're a D student in New York, you're mayor of Des Moines.
I went into prison, I was 27, 28 years old. When I came out, I was 45. When I went in, I was a mother, 2 young children, a wife, and a daughter. And when I came out, I was a widow and an orphan and a grandmother. And it was on death row that I learned about choice, really. I had a choice. I could either go along with what they said, accept it fully, and that it was hopeless, that they had all the power, and that they were most likely going to kill me, or I could believe that there was hope, kind of like she said up there, there is hope, and I just chose to believe in hope rather than hopelessness.
One of the things we did just systematically in the Exonerated, half of this evening was based on the direct testimony of Sonny and the other 5 exonerated characters, and we never added anything. But what we did take out was anybody who argued about the correctness of the death penalty. We removed anything that felt a little like a diatribe. It was only the stories of 6 real people told in their own words that you could get involved with, because nobody was pushing you to feel anything in particular that made people react so strongly.
What Dead Man Walking did was start a dialogue, and it certainly started me thinking more in depth about it and identifying also with the victims. The horrible surprise after someone's been executed is that they just feel it was too fast, or it didn't torture them enough, or something. They all say afterwards that they don't get any sense of closure because no, it doesn't make you feel better. I mean, it doesn't work. They put everything into wanting these people to be killed. They watch it happen, and they go home and they don't feel any better really at the end of the day.
It's really a disservice by the state to encourage people to stay angry and to not heal until they see this other person killed. So they keep them raw and they keep them from healing, and that's wrong.
When you work at the Journal and you go to some of the places that we have been. You want to be within the line of safety, but you want to be very close to that line, right? Because that's where the story is. So there's always a kind of judgment call that you have to make. And so I guess what I'm saying is, not having known him, the ghost of Danny Pearl and that experience, I think, hangs over us, hangs over me certainly, in a very pronounced way.
Whether you speak about anti-Semites and their attitude towards Jews, or political Islamists and their attitudes towards the U.S., the great Satan, the little Satan, and their allies, they bristle with violence, and there is an open will to violence that, and I exaggerate not, that is more pronounced, publicly pronounced and open than the Nazis ever expressed in public.
So civilization, and this is a kind of a deep philosophical problem. Civilization has a very hard time confronting the issue of barbarism because in the process of becoming civilized, we deny the existence of barbarism. Danny's story is as I see it, a kind of moral for Jews like me, who are very secular and minimally observant. And yet, this is a part of our identity. And there are limits to the extent to which we can disavow that identity or submerge it or pretend that it is immaterial, because it's not. I mean, ultimately, as Sartre says, the anti-Semite makes the Jew.
We have a big debate going on in this country now about sucking up bits of intelligence in order to have masses of material from which you can then sort out and make sense out of what's going on. The purpose is laudable, and that is to prevent harm to the American people, to get there first by seeing it's coming and to do this. But at the same time, there's a high risk that we are going to be gathering information of no interest, no legitimate interest to our government.
But I think, as we're speaking about technology, people are readily offering up their private lives on the internet, sure, and often don't feel like their privacy, there's anything left.
I think it's an interesting moment in this country that we have a big question in front of us about the ethics of undercover and people that, I mean, we've got a guy sitting in Russia that this country needs to have a conversation about. When we're talking about the Federal Bureau of Investigation, we're talking about NSA, we're talking about things that represent our nation to ourselves and to the world.
Our Constitution is not that constricting that we can't find the ways to do it. But the American people need to know, and they need to know basically how we know that we're following that principle. And undercover work requires secrecy, but it doesn't require us not to be accountable.
You commit your life to the military. You give everything over. And I fully understood that when I signed, I could be injured, I could be captured and raped. I mean, I think that's a fear of women going into combat, but it's not being addressed, and I didn't expect it, that it would happen for my own comrades, and that the military would turn on me and then discharge me for having PTSD from being raped.
Right now it is a very dangerous environment to report rape. In fact, the military testifying on the Hill admitted that in today's military, the person who reports is viewed as the disloyal troublemaker, not the person who commits the crime.
And it's not just the rape, it's the retaliation, which is why 80% of the people are not coming forward for fear of retaliation, because this isn't just a job, it's a community that you serve with, it's a lifestyle.
The way the Uniform Code of Military Justice is structured places tremendous discretionary powers in the chain of command. And what happens is that these commanders, as probably all of us would do, you get this false notion that you can identify a predator, and that if two people that come to you, that you're somehow able to objectively assess who's lying, who's telling the truth. It's just not working, and it needs to be fixed.
It's extremely important for everyone to put pressure on their congressional members, on their senators, because this really is about culture. Yes, Susan is right. The cases need to be tried, and prosecution needs to occur. Bottom line, that's our goal. But that will only happen with legislation, and legislation only happens with a cultural shift.
Very few of the cases are reported. We think there are like 26,000 cases a year, men and women who are assaulted, but only a small fraction of those ever come to justice. And that is a crime. I mean, this is a too pervasive, silent wound of war.